Okay, so let's get back to our 5 ESY flags. So the first one is if your IEP is already checked no before you even go to the meeting, then you need to follow up with an email and let them know that that's not okay. If you hear from the teacher that your child's making adequate progress and therefore doesn't qualify for extended school year, then what you want to do is follow up with an email and ask about that. The next red flag is if you hear the school members of the team say, well, there wasn't any regression. There wasn't any recoupment time needed. Therefore, your child doesn't qualify. Well, the truth is, most states have recoupment and regression in there as factors, but a lot of states also have other, sometimes they're called predictive factors, that the whole IEP team is supposed to consider when they're talking about extended school year. So you need to be really familiar with your state regulations, because that will tell you what your specific state requires. Okay. So one of the things is, that you can either go to your state department's website and look under special education. Every state has at least one parent training and information center. You can ask them about the regulations that pertain to your particular state. And let's see. Jen says yes. She sees and hears me. Okay, good. We like that, right? The next red flag that you want to look out for is this predetermined schedule. And so many times when I go to IEP meetings, they'll say, your child's eligible for extended school year services. We start June 5th. We go through the month of June, Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 11:30. We have 4th of July week off. We come back for 2 more weeks. That's a predetermined program that's not individualized. So you really need to speak up and make sure that the amount of services, the times, and all of that is based on what your child needs, not based on the convenience of the school district making a program. So if you're on here now, I would love to hear if your district does if your school district does have that predetermined program or that predetermined schedule in the summer. So if you can let us know in the comments. And then another red flag for you is if during the school year your child spends, the majority of their time in a general ed classroom, and then you look at what extended school year is going to look like, and it's like, well, he's only going to be with other kids with disabilities. So what about least restrictive environment? So the good news for us as parents and for our kids is, yes, least restrictive environment does not take the summer off. And it needs to be a consideration for the extended school year services. Now, some parents have been able to, speak up and get more individualized things. So they'll get maybe para support during the summer, and the student will be enrolled in some community classes, and that's a way that they can work on their IEP goals over the summer. So there are creative ways to do it. You don't have to just accept what the district is offering you. So let's see. Hey, Kristen, she says, yes, we have a predetermined schedule. I can put this up here now. We had done the program before, but it wasn't quite the right fit. Yeah, so I would look at, how could that be tweaked, Kristen? And sometimes your child might be eligible for extended school year services, and it's like, thanks, but no thanks. I mean, I was just in a meeting recently, and the parents had already set up a summer program, and they were going to get support from the private therapists, and it was going to work so much better for their daughter. So just because your child's eligible for it, that's the other thing, is you don't have to take it. But if you think your child really needs that, which a lot of kids do, right, is to keep working on those skills throughout the summer, then you need to talk with your IEP team. If the timing isn't right, if you're, some students need it more spread out through the whole summer and not just the month of June or not just the month of August. So all of that is up for a discussion, even though you probably won't be told that by the district. And Jen says, yes, predetermined schedule for ESY over the summer. I know, Ainsley, she says, just found her again. Did you see my last comment? I'll have to go back because, I just realized when I cut that one off and went back here to my computer that I lost those comments. But I can go back when the show is done and I can pick back up on those comments. So I know, Ainsley and Jen, that you had typed in that you wanted the extended school year ebook. So I'll make sure that gets out to you. And what I can do is show you this. So yeah, so just type ESY in and I'll get you the free ebook. So let's go on. Yeah, and keep your questions and comments coming because that's the best way. So Jean says that there's a predetermined schedule and a service formula is half of what he gets during the school year. How interesting. Huh. If speech is 1 hour a week during school, then he's offered 30 minutes per week. Huh. So did that work good, Jean? I mean, what they offered might just fit and be great for your child. It's a little unusual I haven't heard of any districts doing that where they have an actual ESY formula that they can say that your child only needs half of what he gets in the school year. So that would be interesting. And I can't remember what state you're from, Jean. So if you can let us know that too. Yes, Kristen says that she wants the free ebook too, and we shall get that out to you. Ainsley says, we were able to schedule a time in a window. She had an hour a week for 4 weeks of math, an hour a week. So do you think that was enough? And if it is, that's like perfect, right? But what do you think? And then Ainsley, is she eligible this year and you guys are going to opt out of it? Or I think maybe your IEP is coming up on Monday, so you might not have talked about it for this next year. So Jean says that she asked for more some years. Yeah. And Ainsley said she thought it was a bit of a joke. I know, because 1 hour of math a week over 4 weeks. Yeah, that's not much. So, if you want, Ainsley, I mean, that should be a discussion point in your IEP coming up. But it needs to be individualized. So that's going to be the thing. And like I said, for some parents, it's like, thanks, but no thanks. I mean, you don't have to take it, especially if it's going to be something that's worthwhile. But yeah, so that could be a decision. Ainsley says she should be eligible, but not sure what we'll do. The whole county goes to one school. Last year was close to us, but this year, not so much. Yeah, so that's another thing. It's like, and that really impacts the least restrictive environment, because if all kids are bused to one school, guess what? It's just kids with disabilities, right? The The other thing I wanted to mention, and probably all of you know this, that extended school year services are different than the typical summer school that we might have remembered from our school days. But summer school, and some districts aren't even offering it anymore because of the cost, but summer school is typically thought of for students in general ed that aren't on an IEP and they need some extra practice over the summer. Or your typical summer school could also be for high school students that need to make up for credits. Like if, they failed a class, they'll take that class over in the summer. So summer school and extended school year are real different. And because extended school year is part of the IEP, it needs to be individualized, just like everything else in the IEP. Jean says, no transportation services. Yeah, and I mean, that is another area, right? Transportation is a related service. So when you're looking at providing services through ESY, if the student needs special transportation, that needs to be provided. And Jean might have been saying for typical summer school, there's no transportation. Or she might have been saying for her child, they weren't offering transportation. If your child's getting ESY, if special transportation is needed, then that needs to be provided for extended school year services too. So Kristen says, should ESY be considered by the whole IEP team? ESY was not discussed in our IEP, but we were asked to schedule a separate meeting to consider ESY, but without the full team present. So, Kristen, I think that could be one of those things that it depends for you and your comfort level. It is part of the regular IEP. Usually you don't need a full team if you're going to amend the IEP, but when you're writing a new IEP, to me, the whole team should have input into that decision. Now, if your child's annual review falls, in October, there's the question of extended school year services in the IEP, and most often the team will say, we'll come back to this, we'll meet again in March and see if ESY is needed. So it depends too when your annual review is, but to me, it's an IEP team decision. But, if there's not a lot of debate or discussion needed and it fits in your schedule better to just do it separately, you could do that. But you want it still, whatever that decision is, you got to make sure that's in the IEP. You want to know what the goals are that the student's going to be working on over the summer. All of those details need to be written down. So, you can't just make kind of a gentleman's agreement and not get it in writing. So Doni says, my son is available, but they changed the whole team for the summer. People who've never worked with your son. Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like such a transition, right? So again, you can talk about, this was a para that worked with him during the school year. It would be great for her to still be the para during ESY. However, the school can't, mandate that she works in the summer if that para doesn't want to. So that's kind of another thing that you have to weigh, right? It's like, well, I don't know. It's, he's going to be going to a different school with different staff, is this going to be worth it? Is it going to take so long for him to transition into working in a different building, working with different people that, has it really been beneficial for your son? So yeah, it's like, right, there's no easy, it's like, oh yeah, then there's this we have to think about. So yeah, it's a lot to think about. And what I typically find is that it's such a short, brief, hardly a discussion at all when I go to IEP meetings and we have to kind of say, excuse me, we didn't talk about this part. So I love your questions and comments, so keep them coming. And if you're watching the replay, we want you to still comment because I'll come back and check them. So we've talked about the 5 different red flags, and maybe let me quickly kind of go over those. If it's already checked no on the IEP before you've discussed it, that's a red flag. If somebody says, well, your child's making adequate progress, they don't need extended school year services, you just want to ask them to show you the data that they use to make that decision. If your school tells you, well, there was no regression or recoupment, so, we don't really think your child needs ESY this year, you have to be familiar with the state regs because your state regs probably have other factors besides just regression and recoupment. The 4th red flag is to be wary if they give you a predetermined schedule. You want that to be individualized. And you also want to be aware of least restrictive environment. Are there going to be typical age kids without disabilities that your child will have contact with? Because that's an important thing. So let's go on to the shocking things. I mean, like this really shocked me. ESY is not mentioned in the law at all. It's like, what? So if you look at the statute for IDEA, there isn't a mention of extended school year. And that's why you then need to know, what do I base this on? There are federal regulations that you can use, and most states have adopted the federal regulations. And then you have to know your state regulations. So I was going to look in this cute handy dandy book because I wanted to make sure that I was accurate when I was talking about the regulations. So in the regulations, it gives a definition of extended school year, which means special education or related services that are provided beyond the normal school calendar in accordance to their IEP. So they have to work on IEP goals at no cost to parents. You should not have to pay any fees to go to ESY. And it also has to meet the standards of your state education agency. Each school district must ensure that extended school year services are available as necessary to provide a free, appropriate public education. I remember I was at this one IEP meeting with a family, and they had, like, I don't know how, but they had already figured out, somehow in September that she didn't need any ESY come May. And we were at the review in May, and I'm like, well, how did you know in September that she wouldn't need ESY? And the teacher said, well, that's just how our computer is programmed. The default is no, they don't need ESY. So come to find out, they had a special ed director that was like, no, we are not spending district money on extended school year, not for anybody. And so their computer just automatically generated this no. There was no discussion. It was like, well, I think now we know we need to sit down and talk about this. So you've just got to be careful because you never know what's going to come up. So let's see. Domi says, my son is eligible, but they changed. Oh, I did that one, but how they changed the team. Yeah, that makes it so hard. And Susan, she says, in California, it's a full team decision. Yay. I think that is always my recommendation. You want other voices. You want other opinions, So in the federal regulations, it does give some guidelines, and this is in my handy dandy ESY ebook that I made for you guys. So you don't have to take notes, right? The other thing that you need to know from a federal level, as far as what the federal regulations say about extended school year, is that ESY is going to be provided only if your IEP team determines on an individual basis that they're necessary for your child to get a free, appropriate public education. So that's another reason why I think you really want it to be discussed with an IEP team. The school district cannot limit ESY services to particular categories of disabilities. I've seen this happen. I've been in meetings in districts and they're like, oh no, only kids with intellectual disabilities get ESY in our district. And it's like, what? So that's not true. That should not be going on according to federal regulations, right? And that the school district cannot unilaterally limit the type, amount, or duration of those services. So Ainsley, when they're saying that your daughter only gets 1 hour of math for 4 weeks, like, no, that's not what our federal regulations say. So here you have a law that doesn't have anything in it about ESY, but you have federal regulations that do. You have state regulations that talk about the criteria. And it's like, it can sound like mumbo jumbo. So have someone else, help you understand it. And that can really make a difference when you go into the meeting, because you want to feel confident that you know what these regulations say. And sometimes you need an advocate, a friend, somebody else to be there with you to help you learn what that is all about. Now, this is another shocker. So we have regulations that talk about the definition of extended school year, but there's no set criteria in the federal regulations as to what the team uses to figure out if the child, is going to be eligible or not. So it's not in the law, it's in the regs, but the regs don't even have the criteria. So I found that pretty amazing when I learned it. So again, you've got to be familiar with what your state has. Now, most states, like I said earlier, have regression and recoupment in there. And regression means after a long vacation, your child has lost a lot of skills, and they can see that with the data they took before vacation, the data they took after vacation, that, your child forgot a lot of these skills. And then the recoupment comes in because, like, most kids are going to lose some over summer vacation, but most kids within a few weeks in the fall catch up and they're like back on track. If your child takes longer to recoup, to relearn those skills that they lost, that could be a reason in a case where, yes, this child does qualify for extended school year services. Because look at what the data shows, how many skills they lost. They were able to do, X amount of multiplication problems before vacation, and after summer or after Christmas break, look at how low they scored. And it also took us, months to get these skills retaught. So that's regression and recoupment. And a lot of people think that if there's no regression and if there's no recoupment, that like bumps your child out of being eligible. But that's not true. Most states also have other predictive factors that they will look at. Like, so if you live in Idaho, they have a self-sufficiency factor. And this is looking at more of, they call it critical life skills. And so if there's going to be an interruption in schooling and it's going to really impact the person with critical life skills, and they give some examples for this, it's like toileting, feeding, mobility, communication, dressing, self-help, social, emotional skills. If that interruption in the school program would impact those critical life skills, and you live in Idaho, that could be a qualification, for you to be eligible for ESY. In Colorado, they have ESY guidelines, and one of the factors that they also consider is how many opportunities is your child going to be able to interact with peers without disabilities. So if there, again, is that long break in school, they're not around the general ed classmates and their peers, is that going to really impact them? If so, then we need to look at this and how can we prevent that by providing ESY services. So if, like I said, if you don't know what your state regulations are, I'd be happy to, go on the internet and help you find them, because that's something that you really do want to be familiar with. So Jen says, I have seen in school board policies and procedures where it's stated that a team must determine a student needs ESY by a specific date to be eligible for ESY over the summer. In my home district, I was able to get this removed. Yay, Jean. Yeah, a lot of, and again, that kind of comes from, they have this predetermined plan and they want to figure it all out. And sometimes, as individual little kiddos, we don't necessarily follow this set schedule. But I have seen that a lot too, Jen, in other districts where it's like, we need to make decisions about ESY by March 15th or something, like before they leave for spring break. And it's like, you might want to use that spring break to collect more data. So for sure you want it after that. Or you want to give your child a chance to see exactly how they're making progress. So I would say, states can give parents more rights than what the federal, regulations give, but states or districts can't make it more restrictive and take away some of those parent rights. So, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't give any legal advice, but my layman's advocate interpretation would be that, I think that would be seen as more of a restriction in the decision-making process. I mean, you do, sometime before summer starts, right? You need to be able to know if your child's going to ESY or not, but I'm not sure. Sometimes they have dates, set in stone, and I'm not sure that would go over well if you had more of a discussion with them. So the other shocking truth that I have for you guys, let me know if you're shocked. ESY is not just for summer. So let me know, what do you think? Is that like the picture you have in your mind, that ESY happens over the summertime only? Let me know in the comments. I wish we could all just talk to each other, right? Yeah, so ESY is not just for summer. There are a lot of year-round schools that have longer breaks throughout the school year. So that's like an excellent example of, we need to look at all of these breaks during the school year to see what the impact is on your child's free, appropriate public education. Or even there's some districts that will have like a 2-week fall break and a 2 or 3 week spring break and a 2 or 3 week Christmas break. So you need to look at all of those different breaks during the school year to see how that impacts your child. Because ESY is for outside the regular calendar, but that doesn't mean it's only summer, because there's breaks in our school, programs, throughout the year for different vacations or different reasons. So you got to look at that too. So I surprised Kristen. I shocked her. She said, I never knew ESY was not just for summer. What a great piece of information. Yeah, it's like, I've asked for IEP meetings before a long fall break so we could talk about ESY, and the special ed director was like, why are we talking about ESY in October? And it's like, because you have a long fall break. We want to see about, is he going to be eligible for ESY over the fall break time? So yeah, it's those little things that sometimes we don't learn about until we really get into the nitty gritty of it all. And Jean says that she's known this, but there are administrators I've talked to who are convinced that it's just for summer. Yeah, so then it's like, kind of having a discussion. I know, like I said, if you want to download this ebook, it talks about what the federal regulations say about ESY. And then, because I have no idea what state everybody's in, that they're going to be wanting this book. And then the suggestion is that you go to your State Department's website to find your state regulations. And I didn't put this on a little strip or anything, but I want you to know Ainsley is one of our parent advocate trailblazers, and we probably will have more trailblazers on the replay. But I do have a closed membership group where you can pay a monthly fee. We get into the nitty-gritty of what your child needs. It's a wonderful, supportive community. If you're interested in that, go to the top of my Facebook page and you'll see an image there of kids. Click for details, and you can learn about our monthly membership group too. So let me see if you guys have any other questions. Questions. So yeah, I'll come back afterwards and make sure you get the link for the book. Now, next Thursday, I'm going to be driving to Portland for a conference. So I'm not going to have a regular scheduled show next Thursday. I might pop on when I'm sitting in the car, but we're not going to have a formal weekly show next Thursday. The Thursday after that, April 26th, we're going to have a great guest, Stephen Hinkle. Some of you may have heard Stephen speak before. He has autism. He is a wonderful, engaging speaker who I always learn from. And I was just talking to him the other night on the phone, and we were talking about having him come back. He was a guest probably a year or so ago. So next week, no show. The week after that, Stephen Hinkle, a self-advocate, will be speaking with us. So unless we have any other questions or comments, we shall see you guys in a couple weeks. So thank you. Take care.